Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shay. If you're new here, hello, welcome. This video is a doozy in the aspect that it is so long, and I'm so sorry, but I really felt like a lot of these beginning clips were really valuable. And while I was watching it last night, I just couldn't find good spots to pull out. So in this video, we're going to talk about all sorts of things. You can see right now I'm working with this gelding. A little bit of information about him. He's a 6-year-old from Foxhog. His name is HustlR. He was in the Vegas Tip Challenge from, I believe it was last year. So the owner has had him for over a year now. And she got an injury a while back and has kind of got him on the back burner right now. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of a restart with him, and you could see he's just not comfortable with me. Like, he definitely is seeing me as a new person and just intimidating. So I knew that haltering for him was kind of difficult. So that's one of the first things that I wanted to work on with him. And because I'm kind of jumping back into the training scene after moving back to Oregon, I really wanted to go back to the beginning steps with this horse and really see where his boundaries are and ways for us to be able to move past that. So, a lot of what I'm doing now is walking up to him and backing away and giving him that big release to let him know that him standing quietly is what I would prefer. You could see he's still a little bit nervous with just my hand. So I'm trying to kind of tip my head down, not really give him direct eye contact. I'm going real slow, letting him kind of check me out before I back off again. I do have the lead rope in my hand because he has been haltered. It's pretty clear he's been haltered. We've worked on that before. So I just wanted to make sure that, he already knew what a lead rope was. If this was a completely new horse, I probably wouldn't be walking up with the lead rope right away. But for him, I wanted him to just get used to contact. You could see right here, I stopped when he started to lean away. You could see his ears kind of tip towards me. And I wanted to just give him a second. When he slightly turned his head away, that I took as more of an invitation to engage with him. So as soon as he took a couple of those pets, I backed off and he gave me, I think, just like a slight lick and chew. It wasn't very much, but ideally in this situation, I want him to keep his eyes. You could really see the lick and chew there. I've really wanted him to keep his eyes on me or at least be aware of where I am. This was a much better pet. He kind of just sat there and let it go. And it's always really interesting with him how if I back off, he just immediately looks at me with his ears up, like, okay, what is she going to do next? He doesn't come at me threatening at all. He's just not sure about me. I was curious here if he would kind of start walking towards me. That was a super new concept. I wasn't really expecting him to take any steps towards me, but I wanted to offer that to him and see if he would be willing to work with me on that. You could see I kind of turned my back here to be a little bit less of that dominant. And kind of come over next to him, pet him, and then the next thing I did was pet him with the lead rope so that he knew that the lead rope wasn't going to be an issue. He did kind of take a step back, which I think my timing was a little bit off, but that's okay. We just kind of kept going with it. So go real quietly, pet him again with my hand first, and then I would reach up with the lead rope. And at first, I'm focusing primarily on this side. Eventually, I'll get to the point where I'm putting the lead rope over him, but I wanted to make sure that he was comfortable with it before just moving on. You see there, he definitely stepped away. This was the first time coming at him with just the lead rope and not with my hand. So as soon as he engaged with that lead rope, I backed off. One thing that I learned from a gal in California who works a lot with the neuroscience of horses was that when they drop their heads down and they start licking and chewing, it's a lot of release for them. So I didn't want to chase him off for that if that's what he needed to do. I wanted to just kind of let him do his thing. Eventually, I'm able to make my way back into his space, but I want him to be able to kind of process this on his own terms and be able to think through this and let me acknowledge where he's at. And see him kind of step away a little bit. So I just paused, gave him a little bit of a pet with that lead rope. One thing that I would love for him is to be able to drop his head down a little bit more, but because this is the pretty new stages for him, I'm kind of just going with it. I love this part because he just started to kind of lean towards me. He started to think, well, maybe I could go towards this lady. I absolutely love when he turns in like this to just check me out while I'm petting him, almost as a little acknowledgement of me at that point. If I am able to stop and acknowledge where he is, I love that he can look at me and just see where I'm at. What I was doing there is while he was kind of backing away, I didn't want to release on those pets until he stood still. He kind of started to walk away like he wanted to go towards food. Clearly, he knows to back when we're going into him, but I didn't want him to completely turn away from me. So we just went back to petting with the lead rope. This is the first time of going over with the lead rope, and he did great, which I expected. Again, he's done all this before, but we're just going slow to check out where he is and see what things might be triggering for him or what things might even just make him a little bit more tense. And for me, I like to really, if he's tense, I want to figure out why that is and really try to work through getting him to relax into it, not just stay tense the whole time. So you can see we did a little bit of a step with the lead rope, and then I took it off to let him have that big release again. I love that he kind of yielded his hind end and was able to face me a little bit more. This horse does a lot of blocking with his head, so I think that's why it's a little bit harder for him when I come straight onto his side because he can't really block with his head. And we'll see that a little bit later too, I think. But right here, we're just enjoying some good scratches. And while he kind of readjusted, I just let him readjust. And then once he was quiet, step backwards again. He took that little bit of a step towards me, and, just went back to a little bit of praise. Once again, we put the lead rope over his neck and walked just a little bit. I think at this point, I'm trying to get more towards the halter, but not too concerned over getting to it right this second. And I love that I was able to take the lead rope over his ears. A lot of horses don't love their ears being touched, especially in the beginning. So being able to take the lead rope over with no issues was lovely. You'd see him get a little bit more hesitant when I dropped the lead rope and picked up the halter. It's just something different at this point. The sounds from a halter are different than the sounds from a lead rope. So I went back to what I was doing with the lead rope and just petting him first with my regular hand and then petting him with the halter and taking a step back to release. One thing with him too, especially because I'm trying to kind of view him as a newer Mustang, a newer project, a very green Mustang. I personally don't think that he gets the release from pets like a lot of domestic or trained horses. He gets the release from space. So that's why a lot of times you'll see me kind of pet him and then walk away and give him that complete release of the pressure. He kind of takes a few steps backwards here, and I'm just slowly walking with him. It's interesting to look now because a lot of times my feet are pretty even with what he's doing. Right here was the first time that they weren't. I think that part of that is just like I'm just focused on what I'm doing, and that's the way to stay closer to him. Or if my feet are matched, I'm able to stay close. Once he quieted back down, I gave him a big release. I offered to have him walk into me, but he didn't want to. Again, that's fine in the very beginning. I'm not stressed over it. So I gave him that release, and then I come back, give him a good pet. You can definitely tell here that he has experience with halters and stuff just because he's literally just standing here. I wish that you guys could see a little bit better just how tense he was, because I could feel the tension coming off of him on just how anxious he was over this. It's hard to see in video, but you can see when he kind of lifts his head and his ears go back and he just kind of freezes. Right there is a good example. That's him being tense and not so sure of what's happening. So I'm trying to just go slow, and once he engages with it, I'll step back. At this point, this halter was set up with the clip underneath, and in these situations I prefer to have the one over the top, so I kind of just readjusted that. He's not a huge fan of a ton of pressure, so I really wanted to make sure to go slow in this part. When he kind of gave to that pressure and the aspect that he quieted back down, I decided to just step away and let him have that big release again. Here I was dealing with some phone slash watch issues, and so I was going to step away to go check it out, and I left this in because I just was floored over the fact that he just kind of followed me over. This was the first time that me walking away was kind of a way to give him release, and he just followed me, and I was like, dude, that was so cute. I wasn't really expecting it. So then we kind of back out and very quiet. I was kind of expecting him to come back over, but I wasn't too stressed over it. At this point, with how he was facing, I wanted him to turn towards me a little bit more. So I kind of got him moving forward, and then I wanted him to give me his eyes, which he kind of does here. Especially with a horse like this, I don't want to just walk up on his hind end. I feel like he's just a little bit too sensitive for that. So personally, I'd rather make sure that his eyes are facing towards me instead of giving me his hind. And I don't know why I do this. I don't remember where I saw it, where I heard about it. If I want to say maybe it was like a Native American folklore or something. I don't know. That if you blow in a horse's nose, they never forget you or something like that. And it's just something I've done with pretty much every horse I've ever worked with. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you. I could tell you I probably had coffee breath this morning. So impressive he stayed anyway. Again, we kind of went back to the lead rope, partially because I knew he would lead with the lead rope. And so I wanted to get him closer to the halter. We kind of took those couple of steps. And when he moved pretty well, we're going to stop and pick up the halter. Just kidding. We don't pick up the halter yet. So we're switching back over to the halter again. And this time I didn't rub him down with it because, I'd done that a few times. He is responding a little bit to the pressure that I'm putting on the right side of his neck just from the crown piece of the halter. So I'm kind of waiting for him to bring his nose back. And you could see he just shifted his nose, and then I dropped the halter. This horse really is so sweet and just tries his heart out. I think that it's just hard for him being around someone new. He's very green in that aspect, but I sometimes I really like that sensitivity because then I can figure out how to tweak that a little bit instead of having a horse that has no sensitivity that you really have to work to bring out a little bit of that personality. I know we're 15 minutes in and this seems super boring, but to me, I think all of this stuff is really, really important to not rush this part of it, to not skip past these points and think, okay, well, this doesn't matter because we've seen it 3 different times. Every single time that we're doing it, we're able to see his little adjustments and how I respond to it. Meaning, this one, he kind of turned his head away a little bit. So I waited a little bit longer for him to bring his nose towards me to drop just a little before I dropped the halter. You can see him back away just a couple steps there, and it's not something I was super concerned over because he had a little bit of movement forward. It could have just been the pressure that was then put on him when he stepped forward caused him to start to go back. All in all, not a huge issue. So, again, we're just kind of putting that little bit of pressure on him to see what he'll do. He comes back. At this point, we've done the bringing your nose over, so I wanted to get a little bit more from him. And here he just decided to give me some cute little kisses, and I thought it was adorable. That time he actually stepped into me, which I really appreciated. So I dropped the halter, took that big step back to let him kind of figure it out. One thing that's always kind of hard with horses like this is I have to try to not be jerky with movements right in the beginning because I feel like every time I'm a little jerky or I misstep, it makes him a little bit more tense. So at least in the beginning, I want him to, get used to me before I start throwing in, things like jumping jacks. So once we got the halter on, he really settled into it like it was no big deal. After we got the halter on, I gave that big, big release so that he could, really sit into it and have that moment of thought process. At this point, I'm picking up the lead rope to be able to attach that. Right there, you could see him kind of block with his head. That is a big thing for him. And we haven't quite gotten past that, but I want to be able to work to get past that. Instead of just forcing his head to move over, I want him to not feel like he has to block me. I love that at that point he came up to me. That to me says that he's at least a little bit more trusting of me now, and he's able to see that I'm not there to hurt him. I'm there to help. I wasn't so sure how he would be with clipping the lead rope, so I just kind of clicked it a few times to see if that was something that would be spooky. Wasn't an issue, which I wasn't expecting it to be. But again, if we're taking this back to beginning steps of working with Mustangs, that's something that you want to consider, is that sounds like that can still be scary. I'm not necessarily asking him to step into me, but I'm not asking him to. So when he chooses to come into me, I just really appreciate that. And that's the time when I'm like, okay, he's acknowledging that it's okay to move forward. And so I start taking the lead rope, and this is what I call jump rope in because I used to do jump rope with my domestic mare. But my goal with this is to be able to swing the rope and see if it hitting the ground is scary, or movement up near his eyes is scary, or the tension of the lead swinging back and forth underneath his chin. Here, I'm working on a little bit of downward pressure, seeing what he does if I put the slightest bit of downward pressure on the lead rope. This is something that is really, really difficult for him. Today was like day 6, I think, and he still is having a hard time with it. We're getting better about it already, but in these beginning stages, it's literally just hold the lead rope with a few fingers, hold it, steady pressure until he drops just the slightest inch. It doesn't matter if that one was a great one. It doesn't matter if he's just bringing his nose in or dropping his whole head down. I want him to just feel the pressure from the lead rope and drop his head down. If I felt like the putting pressure on the lead rope wasn't enough for him, I wouldn't necessarily just increase the amount of pressure on the lead rope. I don't remember if it's in this video or not, but I can reach up with my right hand and put it over the top of the pole and have my left hand on the lead rope. My left hand starts with pulling the lead rope down, and then if I'm not getting any sort of response, I might just push a little bit of pressure over the pole. It's not much, it's just enough to get a little bit of a reaction. And for the most part, he doesn't need that. He also does this. Don't know why. I don't know what his thought process is there, but I right now am just kind of ignoring it until we can get more of a baseline. He really was starting to figure out to bring his head down and almost down and in. I'm not too worried about bringing his chin to his chest, but I wanted him to drop his head down more towards the ground. Another thing is I don't necessarily want to reward for backing yet. I do want him to eventually back from the lead, but when I'm asking him to drop his head down, the goal is to drop his head down, not to back away from the pressure. This is something we do for a little bit. And I know, again, it seems very boring, but I kind of believe at this point in my life that a lot of training should be boring, that it doesn't need to be a big explosion every time that you ride. I was just having a conversation about how a lot of sessions can still be fantastic sessions without having your horse dripping in sweat. Whether that means they're ridden or not, it just means that you're still working their mind at the end of the day and they're still learning new skills. They're just not having the physical exertion it might be to, round pen for 30 minutes or be ridden hard for an hour. It's just a different way of being able to teach them. Here, I was starting to ask for a little bit more when it came to his head down. He'd done a few really good ones, and I kind of wish watching it back now that I'd given to him a little bit before then, partially because now I think he was starting to get a little bit antsy and didn't really, he was just bracing against it and then doing this. So as soon as he gave right there, I immediately released just because we kind of went back to being stuck. And so as soon as he gave me that little bit, I wanted to just give to him. This I was kind of testing to see what he would do when I would lead. Some people have different definitions as to what correct leading is. For me, I want that horse up by my shoulder. I don't want them dragging behind me. I want to see how he yields and if he's going to turn his hind end away from me or if he's just kind of going to blow me over. Right there, you could see he blocked again. So I wanted to kind of come back to center and let him kind of move in that direction. He still is blocking me. So we're just going super slow. Once I'm able to get over there, we go real quiet. I'm asking him to just kind of yield his hind end a little bit. There I was working on getting him out to a lunge and just kind of walking on a circle. I try not to put a lot of physical pressure in the aspect I don't really want to touch them. I might swing the rope at them. I might kind of clap my hands, wave, whatever. But I prefer not to have that physical contact. So he moved up into a trot fairly nicely. It kind of took him a second, but his stop was pretty quiet. I like that I can turn my shoulders and he'll still stop or come into me. With him, even to this day, he is very sensitive about where that drive line is. And if you get anywhere in front of the drive line, he immediately stops or at least slows down and turns into you. So with him, I have to stay pretty far back from that drive line. You can see right there, he kind of did what I was talking about, where I got a little bit too far ahead and then he turns away and he starts to look at you. So I just encouraged him forward again. Keep him at a nice quiet walk before I ask him to move into a trot. Very nice little pickup. He kind of pulls just a little bit. I like how he just ran through my little poop pile that I had set up. But once again, a very nice stop. He's very quiet about stopping. So he has a lovely trot, a really nice stop getting into it. It's just the sensitivity with that drive line. So specifically this side seems to be the more difficult getting him to move out. So I just kind of swing the rope. I could be using a whip, but again, with this being the first session that I'm really working with him, I didn't want to go overboard with all the different things that I could be using. So I wanted to keep it nice and quiet, nice and low energy, just keep him moving forward. You can see I'm really kind of like leaning towards the right side. I'm trying to really exaggerate that I want him to move away. He needed another poop break. Nope, it's a fart break. Nope, it's a poop break.
Oh, you have to poop. So sorry.
He tends to poop everywhere. And it gets very obnoxious, but I'll try to kind of keep it contained, and then he just doesn't want to. So we just kind of kept going with lunging, keeping again at a very low energy. But I just love the way this horse trots. It's very floaty. Me making the noise by clapping my leg makes it a little scary for him. So we're working past that. But I definitely think with his sensitivity, it's nice because it makes him a lot more aware of what I'm doing and it makes me aware of what I'm doing. Anytime I would kind of stop and look a different direction or be paying attention to something else, he would stop and look at me. So it makes me very aware of the things that I am doing. A little bit of a rough stop there. Kind of took him a second, but as soon as he had a little bit of tension on the lead rope, he came right in. And especially when we're working on things like lunging, I want him to come into me and see me as a quiet space so that he's more inclined to come up to me for things like haltering. We kind of just were taking a little bit of a break here, taking some pets, enjoying some quiet time. And we went back to that downward pressure just to kind of change things up a little bit, especially because we went through something that caused a little bit more of that tension, a little bit higher stress. Being able to have him drop his head back down is super important. You can see he's just bracing. So I'm not, this frame is not frozen. I am not putting any more pressure than necessary. I'm just kind of holding a light pressure there until he gives. This part, I'm just kind of testing, see if he's comfortable with me touching his forelock, touching his pole. You can see just how much he's really bracing here. And I really don't like to apply extra pressure because at some point he will drop his head down. It may take a little bit. I might have to stand there. My back starts hurting, but like at some point he will give into that pressure without me needing to, white knuckle the lead rope and yank his head down. That to me just isn't necessary if he can do it from a very light touch. And I think doing all this stuff with very, very light pressure, even if it takes longer, will lead them to be a little bit lighter of a touch once they finally have this down. Once again, we're moving back out to a lunge, just kind of moving forward, nice and quiet. And some horses tend to get out on the lunge and then they just take off. So it's really nice with him that he's very quiet getting into it, which is kind of funny because I still feel like he's tense, but at least he's not sprinting away. So we get that nice, pretty trot going. I'm just figuring out where that drive line is and moving him forward. This stop was lovely. I don't necessarily always love them coming into me on the lunge line, but with him, it seemed like that was him wanting to come over and wanting to be near me, which I thought was important. So I wasn't expecting him to ground tie at all, but I did want to give him the opportunity to feel a drag line and see what he would do with that. He did step on it with his back foot, and you guys could kind of see a little bit of a freak out moment. But all this really does, for me anyway, is they start to understand that pressure being put on the halter means that they should bring their head down, but it's on their own terms, it's on their own release. So all I was doing was picking up poop, but I kind of gave him an opportunity to walk away, to feel the drag line, and just see what he would do. I was a little worried he was going to get my camera, so I kind of chased him out of the corner. He spooked a little bit, but I gave him a minute to kind of move around with the lead rope since he wasn't willing to give me his eyes right away. He kind of turned into me, and it felt like at least he was walking towards me. I think he's trying to get his feet moved around the lead rope, but it was nice that he still viewed me as a point of comfort and not, someone get this lead rope off of me and not just panicking. Going back onto yet another lunge. So I don't remember how much we did this session because this was probably a week ago now, but he picked up the trot again, and again, I've said this already, but I love his trot. It's very floaty, and he's just a little bit different than the typical Mustangs. So, nice little come in to me, receive a little bit of pets, and I think he was licking and chewing there. So you could see he kind of stopped there. And one thing that I don't like to do is when I feel them freeze up, I don't want to turn around and put all of a sudden this kind of dominant pressure towards them. If anything, I want to stay looking forward where I'm going and keep the even pressure on the lead rope to get them to walk towards me. Here he was really starting to figure out the moving out on a circle. He was really starting to understand my specific cues with it because it's always hard going from person to person. Everyone does things different. Even if you're taught by the same person, you might be just slightly different than the person that taught you. So I think it's really important to take that into consideration when you're working with each individual horse. Right there, he did a little bit of head blocking still. So I went back down into putting a little bit of pressure on the halter and lead rope, and he gave me just a touch. So when he gives me that touch, I give him a little bit of praise. Right there, he actually gave quite a bit, but he also was kind of smelling my arm, and I didn't want the intention to be smell my arm. I wanted it to be more of, hey, we're intentionally bringing our head down. That was a nice big give from him, which was pretty great, especially for him to be as locked up as he was. And then me put that little bit of pressure, and he gave, a few inches worth. That was huge. So I definitely stepped back, gave him a little bit of physical release, and then since he came in, give him that praise. Ideally, what I'd like to get him to is when I put that pressure on the lead, I want him to have his head almost as low as like touching the ground. And I just want him to be able to give that much. With him, I feel like he gets a little bit locked up. The last thing I was going to work on today was basically haltering again. Since we're essentially almost done with the session, I wanted to see what he would do if I were to take the halter off and walk away. And the fact that he came into me was lovely. That to me is huge when it comes to taking a halter off. I don't ever want horses that have the halter come off and they go, oh, yay, I'm free, and they just run away. Like, that is not ever ideal. So I would much rather a horse be willing to come back into me or at least stay next to me while I'm taking the halter off until I give a verbal cue. For both of my horses, they don't leave until I say okay. That's just a personal thing. It's kind of a safety thing too, just to not have a horse that tries to run you over or turn around and kick you. It might seem unnecessary, but I think they're good stepping stones when it comes to correct haltering to not just get the halter over the horse's neck and then throw it on. I want them to understand that putting the halter on can be like a joint task, that they could relax into it, that they could bring their head down and make it a little bit easier on both of us. So we got the halter back on, and I just kind of started walking him around a little bit. And this is always something that's easier to do when you're in an enclosed space that's, just you and the horse. It's always a little bit harder when you have another horse in there, when you have food as a distraction, when you have a whole pasture they could run to. It's just easier to begin this training when you're in a smaller space.
I see your ears.
You can really see him thinking here. His ears twitching back and forth are a pretty clear indication that he's just thinking about everything. So here you could see he kind of starts to turn away. So that's why I stepped back just a touch, let him kind of straighten back out and give me both of his eyes. I was pretty far away, so I wanted to see what would happen if I stepped a little bit closer and then backed. And he wasn't really wanting to move forward towards me, which was fine. You'd see a little bit of lick and chew from him, just processing what I was asking. There's another block there too, so that's why I kind of backed up a little bit and just let him kind of tell me what he was thinking and feeling. Since he was continuing to block with his head, I was kind of curious if me coming a little bit backwards or coming towards him with my side might let him kind of ease into it a little bit more and allow me over there without blocking, which he kind of did, kind of didn't. I felt like eventually he gave into it, but it wasn't as deliberate as I would have liked. So here I'm just putting on the halter again, just putting it on and off again, halter on, halter off. It's super boring, but same thing over and over. When I get that little bit of tension on the lead, I let him kind of come to me instead of me trying to fight him with movement forward. We're asking again for a little bit of downward pressure before we end the session. I want to say this is like the last time that I end up doing this. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed watching the first session of working with HustlR. He is super fun. I love his Roman nose. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned. I have a couple more days of footage with him. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ding the little notification bell, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.